Alrighty, so let's do just this part of our attendance, and you will have already gone over the first part. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about you're practicing your first query by doing the part 2 of the querying. You did part 1 last week, and now you're going to do part 2. And if you click here, you'll be taken to a file, a markdown file, that walks you through what you need to do. In this video, I'm actually going to walk you through the setup of this because this is something we're going to use again and again in this class. Okay, but before I do that, right, I want you to know that you actually get points for doing the work here. So 50%, 50 points comes from this, okay? So what do I have open? So right now I have, just to show you, I have my GitHub in the browser, okay? Now, in this case, sometimes it gets a little confusing to say, am I in CodeSpace or am I in just the browser in GitHub? I get that. At the beginning, it can be. So right now, I'm looking at my GitHub native, I could maybe call it, although there's a better name. But in my other tab, I've already gone over here and I've started my code space, okay? Special Spark. And then in here, I have uncommitted changes. And what that means is right now I have changes I've done on my on my code space that aren't in here yet. So what is listed here is not the same of what I have listed here. And that's just good to know kind of as we move forward. And now if I move over to my code space, which I'm in now, I can actually see in this case, now yours may look differently based on if you have a different template, so on and so forth, okay? But in this case, I was just playing with our demoing, testing out the demo I'm about to do just to make sure nothing went wrong. So hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, I'll walk you through what it was. So you won't have this subdirectory, don't worry about it. It's just the same thing I have, and you should have the git help and the querying already with that readme file that we created in part 1. Now the other thing I have is I have my terminal open, right? I have my bash over here. Okay, so this is the setup as I have it right now. And so now I'm going to move back over here to the instruction, right? So what you're going to do first is you're going to actually copy in the database that you're going to see Carter use in the videos you're about to cover. Okay, so first what we're going to do is use this command in your code space to actually copy this database file into your directory. And what's key about this is the location that you're going to copy it into, therefore where you're going to paste this command. So I'm going to go ahead and hit copy here. Okay, I'm going to move over to my code space. In my code space, don't do it yet, okay? I'm going to want to be in this querying subdirectory. Now, I've shown you different ways to do this, right? But one of the ways I like to do it, and you probably know this, if I hit CDQ tab, then there's only one folder listed with Q starting, so it'll find it, right? So the other way I could have done it is I could have opened an integrated terminal. Now, you may get a message here, and you probably got this last time saying, "Ooh, wow, my colors changed." Looks like I was playing with them earlier and it was like, okay, I didn't like that. Anyway, so in here, right, the last time I had you do it, you can open an integrated terminal would be the other way. But I noticed when I did that, I got a little message showing, hey, you know what, you're going to have to agree or you're going to have to allow it. So make sure, and you've probably already encountered that. Okay. So the first thing I want you to know is you're going to copy a database from the repo that I'm providing, this files repo, right? And in here, you're going to paste it into you're going to paste the command that's going to copy it into your querying directory, okay? So again, if you didn't already, copy that. Change the folder to be querying, and you can see that. Again, you should see your repo here, not again, but now I'm going to hit Control V to paste it. So right now, I would only paste that if I actually was in the directory I wanted, and I'd hit Enter. Now, I can actually see a couple of kind of interesting pieces of data here about how fast it came across, how big the file is. I mean, there's just, interesting. I don't need any of it right now, but it is interesting. And again, I noticed when I was testing this that it actually made me configure the terminal, but actually I just clicked on it and it didn't make me do anything else, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type clear. And clear just clears out the last thing that I was there, so it's kind of like I don't want to see more than one thing, okay? Now, what we're going to do, and I'm going to not do this step yet because first I'm going to show you when you're working through Carter's part 2, right? And I'm going to bypass this for a second, right? You'll sometimes be watching and writing queries, right? And I'll actually have you give you commit messages and you'll end up doing a new process, right? But you'll do the Git workflow, right? And then in this case, you're actually not, let's see, do you have, I think on the second one, question and style. So the second one wasn't actually a query, right? So you weren't modifying something, but you were writing in the README file, okay? And then comment out. Now you'll see this in a minute, and then continue along, learn about another SQL command, right? And then hit, then there's your commit. So you have 3 commits in here. The first one, sorry, we're going to have a setup one. That's actually the one we're going to do next. But on these, this looks like you're writing some queries here, you're doing some content here, and you're writing queries here. Now, in the past, when you've done this type of work, matter of fact, past meaning for week 1, you actually had to submit something. And I've probably covered this, but I'm going to repeat myself that for this part of the work, I will just make sure you have done the git push, which we'll look at in a minute. But there's nothing to submit because I will just go look at your repo as part of this. Okay? All right, so back here, right? So now I have in there, and you can actually see this, right? So now you can see I actually have our first database of the course. And when you click on it, you get this, open it anyway. No, you don't need to. I mean, we could install an extension, but really we don't need it at this point. It's just something we don't need, okay? But what we are going to do is start writing queries. And in order to do that, and this is going to be something that Carter will also cover with you, but I'm going to cover it here because it's just something you're going to use on an ongoing basis. For you to run SQL, to write SQL on the command line, which you're going to do for the first part of this class, right? What you'll do is first run from whatever directory you're in. So in this case, you have to be in the subdirectory querying where the database is located. Now, you actually can change the reference, but for simplicity, we're not going to. And I want you to notice before we get here, this actually terminal right here is the bash terminal, and it shows you what subdirectory you're in. And that's important to know for something we'll do next. But first, let's just start SQLite 3. Right? So this is going to run the SQLite subsystem on your computer here, right? And you're just going to get a prompt showing that you're in SQLite 3. And then if I didn't give it the next part, it would just run SQLite without any database reference, but I actually want to give it the database reference of longlist.db. Okay, so now I've actually said run SQLite 3 reference, or in my subsystem, I will be using this database. And when I hit enter, then it drops me into SQLite 3. It tells me the version, blah, blah, blah. I'm all good. But notice what happened over here. Now my terminal says SQLite 3 in that querying, but it's no longer bash because I've moved from bash to SQLite. And in this case 3, doesn't say it on the what we call the cursor, but in this case it is there. Okay, so now what you're going to learn in this part of the lecture from Harvard is you're actually going to learn to write queries, right? So as a matter of fact, you're going to write select. You're going to learn to do that. Star. Okay, everything from, now in this case you use quotes, and again, you're going to learn all this syntax. I'm just kind of giving you the overview. And now we're going to actually type the table name. And this is where it can be a little confusing because the database name and the table name are actually, the first part is the same. So we're going to say long list end quote. So double quote, end quote at the end. So open quote, long list, close quote, and then semicolon. So this terminates the line. So this is a query, okay? And again, we're going to learn about this, right? So first you're going to write the queries. Now what I'm about to do is I'm going to hit enter. And when I hit enter, the output from my query is just going to show up. It's going to actually show up here in the terminal, and it's not going to look great. I'm going to show you how to fix that in a minute, okay? So first, let's just hit enter. Boom. So what it does is it goes through and it lists all the columns, right? The rows and the columns and everything in. So show me everything in this one table, right? So this is a record, this is a record. Now, don't worry about knowing any of this. All you want to do is know this is running your first query. Maybe not, maybe you've run queries before. Now, in this case, I'm going to scroll back down to the end so you can see there's quite a bit of data in here. We're going to end up getting several databases through the course. But what I want to do is clear this screen, okay? So I can do shell clear. Now, before I type clear, and when I was typing clear, that was in the bash subsystem. So there's different commands for different subsystems, okay? So in SQLite 3, we wrote our first query, but one of the things you're going to learn is .mode box. So what this is going to do is it's going to set up to where whatever you output to this terminal is actually going to look nicer. When you hit enter, nothing happens and you're going to think, why, right? Until you actually write the next query. Now I could actually hit select here, or I could just use my up arrow once, twice. Oh, there it is. Okay, using the up arrow is a really good productivity tip. Okay, so but it is also good to write your queries, right? So because, you know, you can start here and then I could move back and forth and fix maybe some syntax, but just part of this is learning to get some muscle memory. Cool. Now, in this case, I'm going to zoom out a little bit on my resolution. You can see that it looks a little better here. Okay, so when you're working through this, part of what you're going to do is first just write the queries on the command line and get the right kind of output that you see Carter has, okay, or get the same. And he'll end up showing you'll like I said, you're going to learn several new SQL commands this week. Shell.clear just to clear this out. Now, writing queries, right, in this SQL system, in this terminal subsystem, is a lot of what you're doing. But what I'm going to ask you to do, or have you do on top of that, is actually prove that your queries actually ran and created the right output. Okay, in order to do that, we're going to add something Carter's not going to cover in his video. So let me show you this. Now, in the instruction file, I'm going to scroll back up, right? And after the command where we got the database, now we're going to create a new file, okay? And this is going to be part 2. So for querying part 2, the query, it's the queries themselves, okay? .sql, right? So we're going to create a new file. And in that file, we're going to copy all this code. And then I'm going to actually kind of just give you an overview. But what this is going to be the second part of our attendance is learning about this. Okay. So first, let's create the new file. And it's our first actual SQL file. So let me come back over here. Okay. So in code space, we're going to write the queries here, but then we're going to use a query file to do your proof of work, proof that it worked. Okay. So in here, right, what we're going to do now is we're going to come up here and we're going to create, and I have this drop down. It doesn't matter as long as I have this active, meaning it's selected, and I roll up here to new file and I click on it. Now I can do p2-q.sql. So notice this extension now created a new file icon. I don't know if you'll get that. Sometimes students tell me they can't see it. Don't worry if you don't see it. It's not a big deal. But what I've done is first I've named it, and you'll notice already I'm very specific about naming, right? So make sure you give it the names that I've told you. Okay, so now I have the new file and it opened automatically in here. And notice I have these now untracked files. I haven't done any Git workflow. We'll do that in a minute. So back over here. Now all this code, now there's not a lot of it, okay? But it's basically it's a proof of work process. Okay, so I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come back to my code space. I'm going to paste it. Okay, right? Okay, Now let's go to the top. Okay, so now we have our first query file. Most of the time, we'll be writing queries here and then copying and pasting that query once we know it works into our proof of work. And what will happen here is we'll end up running a command down here that I'll show you in a minute that actually will run our query and output it to a text file, which is awesome. I think that's, if you just think about what you're doing here and notice the dot mode box, right? And by the way, once you do it once on the terminal, it'll last until you end the terminal. But every time we run this file, and you'll see how we run it in a minute, that it just sets that as default. So it's just good to have it in there, right? So change the terminal for readability, change the terminal for standard output to actually output. So instead of that output going like we saw before to the terminal, we're going to actually redirect it and say, hey, put it in this file. Then we're just going to print some content, right, just so we have it. And now in here, we're going to, and this is where I'm telling you what you're going to end up doing, query SQL commands to view all the columns in the long list table. So this is a description of what this query is doing. And this is something you'll see me do as we move further into the class, is actually write descriptions of what your queries are doing, okay? And then here's the query itself, okay? And now, let's actually just run this, and then we'll talk about the last part of this. So now we're in this query SQLite subsystem. We can't necessarily run this file the way we want it run, okay? What we're going to do is actually come down here, and I'm going to hit plus, and what that's going to do, it's going to create another, and let me just move this over so you can see it, another terminal session. Okay, so now I have my SQLite here, I have my bash here, right? And in here, I want to actually also make sure I'm in the querying subdirectory, okay? And notice again how it changes. Now, why am I showing you this? Because in this case, in order for us to, because we know this SQL worked and it was error-free, right? We did that in this subsystem, right? We said select star from, and again, these are style things you're going to learn this week, okay? The table. So select everything. Oh, and look, this is probably good I did this. In this case, I forgot to terminate the line. So if you see that happen, you just didn't terminate the line. That's all, okay? So what happens is you're writing your queries here, but then you're like, okay, I have the right output. Now I'm going to actually prove to Rio that it actually worked and created the right output, because that's part of how I grade it. So the thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do shell clear just to make my thing a little less cluttery. And now I'm going to go to bash. I'm going to grab this part, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I am in this bash terminal going to copy and paste this command. And this should look familiar because we just did this to run the SQLite 3 subsystem. But now we're actually telling it, hey, run that. But in this case, actually run your SQLite. Here's your database reference, and run this file right here that we're in. And so basically it's like a little, it's a little program, something we might call as a batch file. It just runs sequence one by one. So it runs in order, does this, does this, does this. And so we want it to do that. So what we're going to do, and I should just, and this just says in the bash command, right? So in the bash terminal, we're going to copy this. Okay, I'm going to copy it. And you're going to see what is going to happen here. Make sure I'm in that bash. I'm not in my SQLite 3. And now when I paste this in, I haven't run it yet. But watch what's going to happen, because it might surprise you. I don't know. I'm going to hit enter. Actually, in this case, didn't do anything on the terminal. But it did actually create a new file called the proof of work file. See? That's cool. So there's your proof of work showing me, right, that it actually did work. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and close this, because then you're going to write several queries, right? So, and I will tell you, so maybe at this point I say, okay, now that you've either, again, harking back to the instruction that you're going to be going through, right? You're going to watch the video, you're going to write SQL in the terminal. Once the query runs without error, right? And once it runs without error, copy it into here, okay? So you're going to have several queries. So let me show you how you handle that. So in this case, let's say you got the first one done. Okay. Now at this point, you'd read my instruction to see if you write another one or if you do your commit message, right? So in this case, we might do another one, right? So we might say select star from, let's see long list, right? And this is something you're going to learn, limit 5. Okay. So oh, actually I did that wrong. Sometimes errors are good. So actually in this case I did it because I knew it would work, but I didn't do what I was showing you, which is I'd write it here. Select, because I'm going to write it in the terminal from, right, long list, limit. Now in this case, use good style, limit 5. Cool. So now I'm only getting 5 of those. Okay. So now I'm going to run my proof of work again. Okay. So let's actually do that. So now we're going to come back over to here, over to my bash. And what I can do here is instead of copying and pasting that again, okay, I can just up arrow. And when I do that and I run it, then guess what happens? Your proof of work now has your first query. Oh, and look what I didn't do. First query, right? So that's okay. For this example, what you will end up doing is then updating that content and come back over here to know what I'm talking about. So I should have put second query, but that's okay. I'm really just demoing this for you, okay? Now, at this point, let's go ahead and now review our Git workflow. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to come back. Now, where am I going to do Git? Git commands are done on the bash, right? Or maybe some of you are using PowerShell. I don't really care. Okay, but in here, I would do Git status. And I would see I need to add these files, right? So I should have 3 of them. Okay, so I'm going to do Git add star. Now, I could add them individually. Actually, I'm going to do this. No, that's good. No, this actually is good because this is actually what I recommend you do, which is to look at your status, which, by the way, your status is also shown over here. These are untracked files. So git add star. Okay, so now they changed A, archive, which means I now have staged them. I've gotten them ready. There's like I'm telling Git, hey, listen, here are the files I've changed, right? So it says, okay, I see these files. And now I do git commit -m, and let's do attendance, queries, and PO proof of work, okay? Because we had 2 in this case. Cool, right? So I did git commit. So now I've committed them, and notice what happens now. This, right, is actually nothing here. And if I did git status now, right, it shows me for me, because that one subdirectory I didn't do before. But the other last command, if you were actually, and in this case you will need to, once you work through, right, again, work through this section, right, these are the instructions I'm giving you. So once you get through all of them, right, then you will make sure you do git push, okay, because you're going to have, in addition to my, attendance queries and POW, you'll end up also having the select command, the query styles, question and style, and then the limit command, okay? So that's what you'll end up working through here. And then, right, so that's it. That's your proof of work. So now you've learned A, how to write queries on the command line in the subsystem. You've learned, let's see, how to clear the query, the SQLite subsystem. If you're on the regular bash, you've learned clear to clear that out. You've learned now, by the way, I may have you change the name of the proof of work. Let's see if I actually have you do that or if I don't. Because I may not in this one. I don't think I do. I do later actually have you end up. Because then actually even tell you how many queries, right? So the thing I probably didn't say was that, yeah, once you write your query, you do whatever I'm instructing you to do. Then you do -- right? By the way, you can also do command / to just do that instead of typing it twice. Okay? All right. So that's your proof of work. And now, actually, you've already watched. I did this one first, so I'm actually now going to go record the other one. I hope this helps, and see you later.